Hello and welcome to my video on Jaguar C-type cylinder heads. Why is there such an issue about the Jaguar C-type and cylinder heads in particular? Well, we have to go well back to the 1950s when Jaguar competed in the world's most famous endurance races all over the globe, like Le Mans, to win their victories. In that time, you won a race on Sunday, you sold cars on Monday, and this period helped Jaguar to manifest themselves as a powerhouse with racing pedigree from which they still feast up to today. The Jaguar C-Type was the racing version from the XK120, the sports car of the day. The C stands for competition. It had a tubular, lightweight frame, however the powertrain was pretty much of what the XK120 was equipped with. So the answer is yes. Yes, the C-type head is the cylinder head design the legendary C-types which raced in Le Mans and elsewhere were equipped with. At first with two SU carbs and then with a triple twin-choke Weber carburetor setup with high-lift cams. This setup was also sold to privateers who competed in club racing. Firstly, as a factory option, the so-called C-type head could be ordered with a brand new car, then eventually also as a kit to retrofit cars in dealerships. Available for Jaguar XK120s and XK140s and the Mark 7s of the day, this works tuning kit was available under the part number C7707 or C.7707. Later, the B-type head was introduced with the XK150 and the C-type upgrade became obsolete. In that day, just changing the cylinder head from an A-type to a C-type brought the benefit of around 20 horsepower. With some H8 sandcast carbs, you could even gain a little more. The C-type head was sold without camshafts. You were supposed to reuse the camshafts from the A-type head your car was equipped with in the beginning. If you wanted the high-lift cams, these were an extra order. So with all this pedigree, a C-type head has become sought-after equipment in period and later on. It was well distinguished by its red paint, so for sure some other heads got the red paint and were passed on as C-type heads. There is some features that clearly distinguish this from any other head. The so-called experts will immediately tell you a real C-type head has the embossed C in the spark plug row, like this here. Well, has it? Let's find out. This example here, it doesn't have the C molding. In fact, it was introduced later on, when the production of the XK140 was already on the way. You won't easily be able to identify the head if it is mounted to an engine. The B-type head is very similar, so you need to turn the head around. The part number in the catalog is C7707. Therefore, this number has to be in the casting. If you find any other, you don't have a C-type head. This head was casted in West Yorkshire Foundry, in short WYF. So you need to look also for the WYF logo. Here it is. Also the part number over here, C7707, followed by a C3. This is in our case an indicator for being the third evolution of the C-type casting. There have been probably some production changes and improvements. Next to the WYF logo, there's another important marker, RH567 in this case. This is the casting sequence. Historians claim the embossed C was introduced with RH707. The production started with RH336 and up to RH704 there was no embossed C in the production. The C-type heads also came with a special logo on the cam covers which were included. Cars which have been equipped in the factory with a C-type head also got the engine number engraved in the V of the head, including the compression and the S. The S stands for special equipment. Cars which have been upgraded at dealerships or shops do not have an engine number engraved. So our specimen here has G6025-8S punched in. The G indicates this head was intended for XK140. Well, why did I say intended and not mounted? There is some special about this head. We'll come to that later in the video. So as mentioned, the G indicates an XK140. The S that the car was intended to be equipped with the sports tuning option. So in this case, it was probably the SE model, also known as the XK140 MC. All a bit confusing. I'm not entirely sure what the MC exactly stands for. This term was used in the US. The C is most probably standing for competition. -8 indicates the compression of the engine. In this case it was 1:8. The compression was however not determined by the cylinder head, but by the pistons, and it had a lot to do with the fuel quality of the market the car was intended for. So the market saw 1:7 and rarer 1:9. A compression of 1:9 is rarely a problem with modern fuel, so many engine rebuilds changed the compression with newer pistons. So let's look a bit closer at this artifact we've got here. In fact, it's not just some C-type head. They are rare enough anyway, and there is seldom more than a handful on the market globally. This head we have here is actually a small sensation. It is actually a brand new factory item. It has never been in a car, it has never been mounted to an engine. All studs, all the bearings are without any markings and in brand new condition. So we have here a new old stock C-type cylinder head, produced almost 70 years ago, never used since, and it still smells a bit like Le Mans and racing. It is probably the only one in this condition in the world, so let's zoom in a bit on the features. The C-type heads are fastest identified by the red paint. Here you see the reminiscences of a red paint. Even though this head has never been used, the original paint has come off in a large portion. To protect the metal, the head has been covered in oil, and this has probably deteriorated the paint over the time. Here we have the combustion chamber. One can see that the intake valve is a lot larger than on the A-type head. So basically this is a Hemi engine. The combustion chamber is hemispherical. This allows larger valves. It has some other advantages such as better gas flow. On the negative side, it is not ideal for high compression. So to stay in terms of Jaguar, a high compression engine is usually 1:9, which is not a lot indeed. This is also a reason why Jaguar pistons are usually domed, especially the high compression ones. Also to mention, the valves got a special design for improved gas flow. Not only the inlet valve, but also the exhaust valve is larger to reduce back pressure. So let's have a look at the intake side. As you would expect from a new item, the mating surface is pristine. It has never seen a gasket, all the studs are brand new. If we look into the port, we see another feature of the C-type head. Nothing is polished or ground on here. It looks almost polished, but it isn't. It has been very carefully casted. All the ports are extremely clean and even and very straight, marking the way towards the so-called straight port head. Also the valve guide do not stand out too much. They are as flush as possible. A heavily used cylinder head will see minor signs of cavitating, producing extra swirl. As this is a new head, one can imagine why the results have been so good back then. It has also been a masterpiece of the people working at the West Yorkshire foundry. It is a very clean job, something you won't even find on a new product nowadays. If we look into the water jacket, there's also no corrosion in there, all pristine. Well, that is what it looks like when it comes from a factory. Let's have a look at the other side. Here we have the exhaust side. Also, here is the mating surface, which has never ever seen a gasket. The original thrust plugs are in place and in great shape. We can see some original markings from the factory. Also here we have pristine studs. I try to find a way to enlighten the exhaust probe. Oh yeah, now you can see it clearly. There are 0 carbon deposits on the exhaust side. You can see very straight exhaust passages. Also one of the reasons why this engine runs so efficient. As previously mentioned, the cylinder head was sold without cams. However, the cam bearing caps and the cam bearings were in place due to production. We can see what the studs looked like when the head was new. Also the cam bearings are untouched. There has never been a moving part scratching the surface. This is the pristine original material. Looking close at the caps, all have the original markings on the cap and on the head itself. So if we have a closer look at the quality of the engine number punching, as I was uncertain if this engine number was punched in at the factory or at some shop, I have done my homework and compared it to other original numbers. This design matches 100%. I have overlaid photos from numbers in a graphics program, and there is no doubt this engine number has been done in the factory. So indeed, this head was intended for XK140 MC. So this is the front and the face of the head. This does not look so new, some might argue. So let's see if there's a little bit of shine left. I have done a little bit of cleaning and you can see it has a nice reflection. As mentioned before, this head has been covered in oil, probably during production. And this did not only protect the metal from corrosion, but also destroyed the paint and bound a lot of dirt and grime from 70 years in storage. This brings me to the next point. What has happened to this cylinder head and why has it not been fitted to a car? To be honest, nothing is certain at this point, and all is speculation. But some things are obvious. It came to me a few years ago with some other parts I had purchased. Since I did not immediately spot the embossed C, I did not get too excited about it, and at first glance I haven't realized it was a brand new item. So I packed it away for later. I assume in the chain of owners I was not the only one and the first one to come to this conclusion. The fact it has already been assigned an engine number leaves actually a few possibilities what happened in the factory. Maybe there was an error in the engine number, mixed up digits, or heads were punched twice with the same number, or for whatever reason the car specs have been changed. As it was an earlier cast, as we have identified with the casting sequence, it was not an overproduction towards the production end. So I think it had a problem with the numbering also. Another explanation could be it did not have the embossed C. In those days, when the factory got a new load of parts, they were put on top of the parts already stocked. So it could have well happened it took a while to work on sell through the new supplies to get to the bottom where still some old stock resides. So, as the component could neither be put on a car nor be sold over the spare parts program, it simply was dumped off at a dark place in the factory where it collected dust and years to be either sold off or saved from the scrap dump. In times of newer engine, it grew obsolete. Then it probably ended up in some garage for years to be uncovered and carried to some spare parts market in the UK and changed a few hands to be handed to me in the end, and collecting even more dust during that time. So here we are. I had recently found some time to look at it a little bit closer and dig in a bit on the history of C-types and C-type cylinder heads in particular. I was very pleased, as you can imagine, to find out it was the real thing. I was completely flabbergasted when I discovered this was a brand new factory item. So, what should I do with it? I have a very poor Mark 7 engine to be rebuilt, and I could build myself a nice engine for a fun project. However, I'm a guy who uses his stuff heavily, and it does not feel correct for me to use the possible only NOS C-type head in the world on some project. I'm not even sure this head should be used in any project. Maybe it deserves to be kept in a vault and locked away for another 70 years or to go in some museum, whatever. I'm not the right person for that, so I pretty much have made up my mind and decided to pass it on to somebody else and sell it. I have already approached a few people in the industry with some interest. We'll see if their interest is high enough. In any case, I would also like to see it at a good auction at a great event. I'm thinking about Goodwood next year maybe. I would even find it great to have a good reason to go there myself, so yeah, that's the way to go, I guess. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to get more contents like this, and I will be looking forward reading all your comments.